I'm going to do a disc washer method one where we're going around the y-axis because we haven't seen it yet, which also happens to be page 433, number 3, so it's that homework problem. So we have the curve y equals x squared, and we have y equals 4, and we have x equals 4. Happens to mention first quadrant only, so we're only looking at the first quadrant, which means they may have a connection somewhere else in the graph, but we're only interested in the first quadrant. And we're rotating around, this time, the y-axis. So let's look how it's different. So again, when you're using the cross-section or the disc washer method, whatever axis you're rotating around, you want your variables in the same. So you want to end up with, you want y numbers for boundaries, and you want all your variables in terms of y's, because I'm going around the y-axis. So for this problem, it poses a little bit of an issue because our curve is in terms of x's, right? We have y by itself, which means y is defined in terms of x's. And so I can't plug x squared in here because we're going around the y-axis. So one thing you need to do is change your equation so that you have x equals, and then your expression is in terms of y's. So that's one thing I'm going to have to do. So take the square root of both sides, and you get x equals. Now this gives you the positive and negative square root of y, but we're only interested in the first quadrant. So that's just the square root of y. Okay, so now I have that one defined. And so let's look at the graph so that we know what we're talking about. Y equals x squared. Now, to graph it, I'm used to y equals, and I know that that's a parabola. Whoa. It's a basic parabola that goes through the origin. Now, again, we're only talking about the first quadrant. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this part right here because we're not interested in that part right there, because it said first quadrant. Y equals 4. Let's see what, oh, I got to finish. I erased my axis there. Y equals 4. Go to 4 on the y line and draw yourself a horizontal line through it. That's the line y equals 4. And then the line x equals, no, I don't want green. Ooh, I'll take that one. X equals 0. You've got to know when you see it automatically that that's the y-axis. So I have the line y equals 4. I have the y-axis, and then I have that curve, and I can see my little boundary right there. Let's do the boundary in yellow. So here's my region that's bounded, and I'm rotating that region this time around the y-axis. So I need my boundaries in terms of y's, which means I want to know what's the lowest point on the graph and what's the highest point on the graph. Well, they gave us the highest point. That's the line y equals 4. I already know the lowest point is 0 because I know that's the lowest point there. So I'm going from 0 to 4. That I kind of know from the equations and from the graph. So those are my boundaries. So when you're drawing your little cross sections mentally, remember you go perpendicular to the axis you're rotating around. So I'm envisioning making little slices and cuts in this shape and then looking at the area of that circle. And so it's from this curve over to this curve. My outside circle would be this purple curve. My outside curve, excuse me, when I rotate around. Because if you look at like a little mirror image, right, that curve will go around. I'm trying to make it dotted. It's very hard to do on the iPad. So the outside is the purple curve. The inside would actually be the y-axis, which is 0. So again, I don't have a second circle to worry about. So now I'm going to plug in my values here. So it's pi r squared. The radius is actually the expression of the circle, but remember, you got to put that in terms of y. So don't go back up here to the original and put x squared in there. We have to have everything in terms of y's. So square root of y is the expression of that curve. And remember, it's pi r squared is the area of the circle, so don't forget to square it. So I'm going from 0 to 4. I'm going to pull that pi out. Square root of y squared, it just gives me y. And so that gives me y squared over 2. Plug in your values of 4 and 0. 4 squared is 16. 16 over 2 is 8. When I plug in 0, I get 0. 8 minus 0 is just 8. I'm going to go ahead and put my pi back in there. So the answer to that one is 8. pi.